JBN, we keep you informed. I am Michelle Jones, and in the news, man shot and killed in Shrewsbury, Westmoreland. The Whitton police have commenced an investigation into the death of a man who was shot by armed men in Logood District, Shrewsbury, Westmoreland on Saturday. He has been identified as 40-year-old Gregory Scarlett, a labourer, also of Logood District. Reports by the police are that shortly after 8:30 p.m., Scarlett was walking along a section of the Shrewsbury Main Road when he was pounced upon by armed men and shot multiple times. The police were summoned, and upon arrival, Scarlett was discovered suffering from gunshot wounds. He was rushed to hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Man murdered in Montego Heights, St. James. The Montego Hills police have commenced an investigation surrounding the death of a man who was shot and killed by armed men along the roadway Montego Heights, St. James, on Sunday morning. Dead is Earl Montague of a Salt Spring address, also in St. James. Reports by the Montego Hills police are that about 7:40 a.m., residents living in a section of Montego Heights called Resort Drive summoned the police after hearing loud explosions coming from a section of the community. The police responded, and upon arrival in the area, they discovered a Toyota Fielder motor car crashed into a wall. The search of the vehicle resulted in the discovery of Montague, who was slumped behind the steering wheel with multiple gunshot wounds to his upper body. He was transported to the Cornell Regional Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Ex-cop gets 19 years in prison for shooting man. Ex-policeman Sherwood Simpson has been sentenced to a total of 19 years in prison for shooting a man in St. Mary. Simpson, a former detective constable, was sentenced to 19 years for wounding with intent and 14 years for illegal possession of firearm. The sentences are to run concurrently. Sentencing was handed down last Thursday in the Home Circuit Court by Chief Justice Brian Sykes. Simpson was convicted on May 5. The ex-cop was charged following an investigation by the Independent Commission of Investigations Indicom into the shooting injury of a civilian in St. Mary on December 23, 2013. It is alleged that the accused and 3 other persons took the civilian to a remote area in the parish where he was shot and abandoned. Indicom says Simpson was first convicted in June 2015 and was sentenced to 5 years and 15 years at hard labor for illegal possession of firearm and wounding with intent, respectively. He filed an appeal, and in 2017, the Court of Appeal ruled that the conviction be quashed, the sentences set aside, and ordered a retrial in the interest of justice. The retrial began on April 12 and was heard by Sykes. Simpson was found guilty. Alleged hitman in Tamara Geddes' murder again remanded in custody. Brian Shelley, the alleged triggerman in the Friday, June 19, 2020 murder of 36-year-old Trelawny woman Tamara Geddes, was again remanded in custody when he appeared in the Trelawny Circuit Court yesterday. Shelley, a native of Norwood, St. James, is booked to return to court on Thursday, July 1. The court, presided over by Chief Justice Brian Sykes, was told that Shelley is expected to settle legal representation by the time he returns for trial next month. Last year, Geddes was gunned down in her bedroom in the reserve community in Trelawny in the presence of her 10-year-old daughter. 40-year-old Nadine Geddes, who pleaded guilty to the murder of her 36-year-old sister, was sentenced to 20 years in prison at hard labor in the Trelawny Circuit Court in March. Nadine's 2 daughters, 21-year-old Shanice Ruddock and a 15-year-old, who both pleaded guilty to misprision of a felony in the case, were each given 3 years probation by presiding judge Justice Martin Gale. Rexton Knott, 24, another defendant, who was jointly charged with murder and conspiracy to murder in the matter, pleaded not guilty and was set free as the court had insufficient evidence to proceed against him. But 55-year-old Owen Irving, who pleaded guilty to murder and conspiracy to murder, and a 33-year-old Tashana Young, who pleaded guilty to conspiracy to murder, were sentenced to 20 years and 5 years respectively. Meanwhile, 21 lotto scamming-related matters dominated the 80 cases on the list for trial during the Easter session of the Trelawny Circuit Court. The other matters include 19 murder offenses, 11 rapes, 9 sex with minors, 5 causing death by dangerous driving, 4 wounding with intent, among others. Hearse involves in 3-vehicle collision in Portland. A 3-vehicle collision at Crabbill in Portland, involving 2 cars and a hearse transporting a body, has been viewed by many as somewhat sinister. The eerie incident took place shortly before 10 p.m. Monday along the main thoroughfare of the North Coast Highway leading into Port Antonio. Eyewitness Houghton Brown said that it was a car traveling towards the nearby district of Norwich which slammed head-on into the hearse, which was allegedly transporting a dead man. The 3rd vehicle, which was traveling towards Port Antonio, was also hit by the car. The police were quickly on the scene, followed by a wrecker, which later towed 2 of the vehicles. There was murmuring among the large crowd, with some people echoing that it was a warning, while others were making utterances about cashing in on the Supreme Ventures self-styled cash pot and a lot of numbers. No one was injured in the accident. $101 million collected, almost 3,900 charged under curfew and DRMA. Almost 4,000 people have been charged under the Disaster Risk Management Act DRMA at the end of the first quarter of 2021. This was disclosed by the Court Administration Division, CAD. CAD said some 3,891 people have been charged, with the average raw score of fines imposed per person over this period being $26,047. The figure suggests that the government has collected approximately $101,348,877 in fines. CAT did not provide an overall figure. It is said that the most common charges include the breach of the curfew order, breach of the DRMA, failure to wear a mask in a public place, hosting an unpermitted event, and causing excess and prohibited assembly. A total of 2,155 people were charged for breaching the government's curfew order, accounting for 50% of those charged between January and March. 1,864 people were charged for breaching the DRMA. Meanwhile, 103 individuals have been charged for failing to wear a mask in a public place, 30 for hosting an unpermitted event, and 23 for causing excess and prohibited assembly. The CAD noted that several persons were charged for more than one offense. At the same time, it said that the maximum fine imposed under the DRMA was $250,000, while the minimum fine imposed was $1,000. 37 people have been jailed for failing to pay the fine. Last week, Prime Minister Andrew Holness stressed that the country is still operating under the DRMA as it relates to the management of the novel coronavirus pandemic. The government, more than any other entity or agency, has the duty to ensure that the Disaster Risk Management Act is observed not only in our words but also in the actions we take, he said. Holness said while it was clear that Jamaicans have grown frustrated with the measures imposed under the DRMA, this is a matter of mood. When we were in the midst of the pandemic, the mood was different. When we were in the grips of the last spike, the mood was different. In fact, the perspective was that the government needs to tighten up, and the government is weak and not doing enough. And then we'd have seen the situation in other countries. But I urge Jamaicans not to get complacent, not to lose sight of the very dangerous and delicate situation in which we are. Other countries are progressing out of the situation because they have access to vaccines and their population. Some of them are more than 50% vaccinated. Some are as high as 80%. We're still hovering at about 5%, so we can't take any risk because the same people that curse us today, that being too tight, are the same ones who will turn around and curse us tomorrow if we loosen up. So we have to be very practical and very cautious, said Holness. Jamaica records 3 additional COVID deaths, 48 new cases. 3 additional COVID-19 deaths brought Jamaica's death toll to 974 yesterday, as the country recorded 48 new cases of the virus. The country has now recorded 49,031 confirmed cases of COVID-19, of which 21,034 are active. According to the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the 3 deaths are a 77-year-old man from Portland and the 2 women, ages 79 and 66, from Trelawny and Clarendon respectively. Of the 40 newly reported cases, there were 21 females and 27 males with ages ranging from 1 to 96 years. 26 of the cases were recorded in Kingston and St. Andrew. St. Catherine and Westmoreland each recorded 5 cases, while St. James recorded 3. Hanover and St. Mary recorded 2 cases each, and Clarendon, Manchester, Portland, Trelawny and St. Elizabeth recorded 1 case each. The country also recorded 217 recoveries, bringing that total since the outbreak to 26,641. JBN, we keep you informed. Please remember to subscribe, like, share, leave us a comment, and click the notification bell to receive our daily news items.